It was just another scorched hot Friday in Cedar Ridge, a small town that barely got noticed on the map, when everything flipped upside down. Danny Miller, a lanky kid with a knack for skateboards and trouble, was the first to see the weird. He'd been cruising past old McAllister's farm when he spotted something gnawing at the fence like it had no bones left in its body, and it wasn't a dog. At first he thought it was some kind of prank like old man McAllister teaching his goats a new trick, but nah, it was moving wrong, jerky and unnatural, eyes all glazed over like someone had poured glass over them. Danny skidded to a stop, the sound of his wheels clattering on gravel like a warning bell, and froze. That's when it snapped its head up and let out this guttural, ragged growl that made Danny's stomach tie itself in knots. He bolted, but by the time he hit the street he saw more of them, people from town but all twisted up, dragging their feet, blood smeared like it was some kind of Jackson Pollock painting. Across town, Jenna Rodriguez, a barista with a stubborn streak bigger than her espresso machine, was locking up the Rusty Bean for the night when she heard it. Screams, shouts, and the unmistakable sound of glass breaking. She peeked out the window and saw a crowd of, well, not a crowd. A horde, moving fast, faster than it should be for people walking. Panic set in and she knew she couldn't just sit there. Grabbing a broom for something, anything, she hustled toward the alley behind the cafe, hoping to figure out a plan. That's when she ran into Marcus Taylor, a mechanic who could lift an engine block solo, looking like he'd just seen the apocalypse itself. "You see this?" he panted, pointing down the street where a neighbor had just been pulled down and bitten. Jenna gagged but nodded. "We gotta get everyone out," she said, voice shaking. Meanwhile, at the Cedar Ridge High Gym, Coach Billings was wrangling kids during practice when one of the football players, little Timmy Hodge, sprinted in screaming, eyes wide like he'd seen a ghost. "They're coming." "There?" He couldn't finish before a loud crash echoed from the cafeteria, the sound of a door ripped off its hinges. Coach Billings froze for a heartbeat, then shouted, "Everyone to the locker rooms now." He slammed the gym doors behind him, barricading them with benches, trying not to think about the moans and screams outside. By this point, the streets were pure chaos. Cars were abandoned, tires screeching, engines still running, the smell of gasoline mixing with something rotten that made people gag. People ran in every direction, some yelling for family, some screaming at the dead, chasing them like it was a sport. Tommy Green, a local pizza delivery guy who'd been just finishing his last drop-off, barely made it out of his van when a neighbor went down right in front of him. "Oh hell no," he muttered, grabbing a nearby pipe and swinging like a madman. The zombie lurched but didn't stop. That's when he realized hitting it wasn't enough. He needed a plan. Back at the Rusty Bean, Jenna and Marcus rounded up a few stragglers. Old Mrs. Perkins with her 3 cats, Danny Miller who was still shaking like a leaf, and a couple of high school kids who'd survived the chaos in their neighborhoods. They huddled behind the counter, peeking out through cracks in the blinds, counting the moans and watching the undead wander closer. Marcus muttered, "Ain't no cops coming. State's probably overrun." Danny swallowed hard. "Then what do we do?" Jenna's eyes darted toward the back door. "We fight, or we die. Simple as that." As night fell, the town of Cedar Ridge looked less like home and more like a horror flick set in real life. Fires started popping up from overturned cars, the wail of sirens nowhere to be heard. Every corner seemed to hide another threat, every shadow a potential death sentence. But amid the terror, small sparks of determination started forming. People were banding together, neighbors grabbing whatever they could, weapons, baseball bats, even kitchen knives. They weren't just running anymore, they were planning. Little did they know this was only the beginning. The dead weren't just random. Something had triggered the outbreak, something that could spread faster than anyone realized. And Cedar Ridge? It was about to become the front line in a fight that would push every human in town to the edge, mentally, physically, and morally. By the time dawn started creeping over the horizon, Jenna, Marcus, Danny, and the others had no choice but to accept the ugly truth. Their world had changed and they either adapted, fought, or disappeared. By the time the sun peeked over the burned-out rooftops of Cedar Ridge, the town looked like a war zone. Streets littered with abandoned cars, shattered glass crunching underfoot, and that constant low groan of the undead shuffled through alleys and empty stores. Jenna, Marcus, and the ragtag crew they'd pulled together huddled in the Rusty Bean's back room, breathing heavy, hands shaking from last night's chaos. Danny Miller was pacing like a caged animal, muttering about what he'd seen, while Tommy Green tried to patch up a small cut on his arm that was already starting to sting. Ain't nothing minor about that, man, Marcus said grimly, tossing the rag aside. If one of those things bites you, you're done. Straight up. They needed a plan fast. Everyone in that little room had seen friends, family, even pets go down, and the fear was real enough to choke. But Jenna wasn't having it. Look, she said, slamming a hand on the counter, we're not hiding forever. We gotta figure out where they're coming from and how to stop them. We stay in this room, we die. Simple math. Nobody argued, but the room was tense. Everyone knew the math might be more brutal than Jenna realized. Their first move was scouting. Marcus drew a rough map on a napkin, circling streets that were already blocked by fire or abandoned cars. We hit the hardware store, he said, tapping a shaky finger. Grab anything we can swing or shoot. Then we barricade, make ourselves a real spot. And we stay together. Danny's eyes lit up. I can ride my board, scout ahead, see if any getting close. Marcus shook his head. Not alone, kid. We need eyes in pairs. Zombies love easy pickings. So, they split into pairs, grabbing makeshift weapons, pipes, baseball bats, even kitchen knives that Jenna insisted weren't totally useless. Danny and a kid named Eli, who was a small freshman with a big mouth and bigger backpack, took the north side. Jenna and Marcus went south, while Tommy and Mrs. Perkins stayed behind to keep an eye on the rusty bean and anyone who might wander in. They moved like shadows, silent but tense, every corner and alley a potential death trap. It didn't take long to get a taste of real danger. Eli yelped when a zombie stumbled out from behind a dumpster, its arm hanging weird like it didn't belong there. Danny hit it with his board as hard as he could and it stumbled back, but didn't go down. Eli screamed. It's not dead, he yelled. It ain't dead. Danny gritted his teeth and swung again, barely keeping it at bay until it collapsed, twitching but not moving anymore. That first kill hit them harder than they expected. Seeing a human-shaped thing, once familiar, reduced to that twitching horror made their stomachs turn. But they learned fast. You hesitated, you got eaten. Meanwhile, Jenna and Marcus ran into another horde near the old gas station. Cars had exploded overnight, making the street a fiery maze. We gotta push through, don't stop. Marcus shouted, swinging a crowbar and knocking a zombie off its feet before it could grab him. Jenna had a wrench and was swinging like a bat out of hell, clearing the way for a group of survivors trying to make it past. One of the zombies latched onto a mannequin in a shop window, knocking it over, and for a split second, it looked human, like it was mocking them. They didn't stop. They couldn't. By midday, the survivors regrouped at the Rusty Bean with whatever they'd scavenged. Bats, hammers, crowbars, a shotgun Marcus found at the back of a pawn shop. They were bloodied, sweaty, exhausted, but alive. And for the first time, a spark of hope flickered. They started talking strategy, realizing it wasn't just about surviving street by street, it was about learning patterns. Zombies moved in predictable ways, and humans who worked together could hold their ground. Tommy, always the practical one, piped up, "We need rules. Don't get bitten. Don't get left behind. Watch each other's backs. And whatever we do, don't freak out. Panicking gets you killed faster than these things ever could." It sounded almost too simple, but everyone nodded, silently promising to try. As night fell again, Cedar Ridge seemed even quieter, almost waiting. The survivors stayed in the Rusty Bean, setting up barricades and keeping watch. The groans had faded into the distance, but everyone knew it was only a lull. Somewhere out there, the horde was growing, learning. And the humans had just learned their first lesson. Survival wasn't just about fighting, it was about trusting each other, staying smart, and not letting fear eat them alive. Little did they know the real test wasn't the zombies outside, it was the fear creeping in from within. And tomorrow? Tomorrow they'd face it head-on. The night didn't last long, and the first gray hints of morning crawled over Cedar Ridge with a quiet that felt fake. Jenna, Marcus, Danny, and the others were still awake, sitting in tense silence at the Rusty Bean, weapons at the ready. Everyone knew the groaning wouldn't stay away forever. It never did. Tommy Green leaned against the counter, polishing his baseball bat like he was prepping for a championship game, muttering under his breath, "Gonna give these freaks a taste of reality today." By mid-morning, the group had decided it was time to move from just hiding to doing something proactive. Scouting was fine for survival, but waiting for the zombies to come to them wasn't a plan, it was a death sentence. Marcus, always the strategist, outlined a rough path on a crumpled map he'd ripped from the gas station. "We hit the town hall," he said, pointing. "It's got big doors, strong walls, ammo in the storage room. If we take that place we got a real base. But the streets are crawling so we move fast. Stick together. Eyes open. No hero shit. Danny and Eli volunteered for forward recon again, riding bikes this time for speed. Gotta see how thick the crowd is, Danny said. Eli wiped sweat off his forehead. And, maybe, see if anyone's trapped. Danny gave him a look. Yeah, we'll try not to get eaten. Cool? Eli gulped but nodded. The streets were worse than they expected. Bodies, abandoned cars, and the smell of rot made the air thick. Zombies moved in clumps now, smaller groups merging as if something was drawing them together. Danny and Eli ducked behind a burnt-out van when a couple staggered too close, their skin gray and ripped, eyes glazed like dull marbles. Danny swung a metal pipe he'd found. Eli screamed when one lunged but fell back when Danny hit it square. We're lucky it didn't bite, Danny whispered, breathing hard. Lucky ain't gonna last forever. Meanwhile, Jenna, Marcus, and a few others were sweeping the streets behind them, clearing zombies from alleyways with hammers and crowbars. They moved fast, every sense screaming danger, hearts thumping. When they hit the intersection near the gas station, a zombie jumped out of a broken shop window, swiping at Jenna's arm. She swung her wrench, knocking it back, but Marcus's crowbar connected first, splitting the thing's head open. Jenna barely had time to breathe before the next one lunged. It was relentless, but their teamwork was working. They moved like a unit, covering each other, trusting each other in a way none of them had ever expected. By noon, the survivors reached Town Hall. The building loomed like a fortress, its doors scorched and dented but mostly intact. Marcus checked the locks while Jenna and Tommy kept watch. Once we're in, Marcus said, we barricade, check the storage for anything useful, ammo, food, medkits. Then we figure out our next moves. This could be our first real stronghold. They pushed the doors open and immediately realized they weren't alone. A couple of locals had beaten them to it, huddled inside, pale and shaking but alive. You guys okay? Jenna asked. One of them, a tall guy named Ricky Malone, nodded. For now, but we ain't staying long if things outside don't chill. Inside, the group scavenged supplies, their nerves still high. Danny found a crowbar and a flashlight, Eli grabbed a backpack full of canned food, and Jenna discovered a stash of old hunting rifles in the corner. Marcus grinned. Okay, now we got a shot. We hold this place, plan our next moves. And we watch each other like hawks. For the first time since everything started, the survivors felt like they had some control, like maybe, just maybe, they weren't completely doomed. But control was a fragile thing. From the windows they saw the horde moving faster now, larger, almost organized in the way only horror can organize itself. The zombies weren't wandering aimlessly, they were spreading, pushing toward the town hall. And the group realized something chilling. These weren't just random attacks. They were hurting them, driving them together. Someone, or something, was orchestrating this chaos. Night fell and the horde's moans grew louder, closer, echoing off the brick walls of the town hall. The survivors barricaded windows, stacked furniture against the doors, and took turns keeping watch. Jenna sat with her wrench in hand, Marcus cleaning a rifle, Danny checking the barricade again. Everyone knew it was only a matter of time before the first real assault hit. Fear was still there, gnawing at the edges of their courage, but something else had started to grow, determination. And when the first group of zombies finally smashed through the barricade at the back door, it wasn't just panic that hit them, it was fire. They were ready to fight back. The night was thick, heavy, like Cedar Ridge itself was holding its breath. Inside the town hall, Jenna, Marcus, Danny, Tommy, and the others huddled behind their makeshift barricades, every ear straining to catch the first sound of movement. And then they heard it, the crash of wood splintering at the back door. They're here, Marcus muttered, loading the rifle with hands that shook just enough to make him curse under his breath. Jenna tightened her grip on the wrench, teeth clenched, eyes darting to the shadowed hallway where the zombies were pushing in. Danny and Eli, positioned near a side window, braced themselves. The first of the undead stumbled through the smashed door like slow-motion nightmares, arms flailing, skin peeling, jaws snapping. Tommy swung his bat with a grunt, knocking one backward into a pile of overturned chairs. Mrs. Perkins screamed as another lunged at her, but Marcus was there, crowbar swinging, skull cracking with a sickening thud. The room erupted into chaos, screams, growls, and the metallic sound of bats hitting bone. Danny swung at a zombie climbing through a broken window, heart hammering. Eli panicked, tripping over a chair, but Jenna grabbed him and yanked him back just in time to avoid a gnashing mouth. Keep it together, she yelled. Focus or we're done. Despite their fear, they were learning fast. Each swing, each shot, each maneuver was sharper, quicker. Marcus barked orders like a drill sergeant, telling people where to move, who to cover, and when to retreat. The survivors started to feel something strange, adrenaline mixed with a flicker of control. They weren't just running, they were fighting back. But it came at a cost. A scream rang out, high-pitched and raw. Tommy had taken a bad swipe to the shoulder, deep enough to draw blood, and he was limping, clutching his arm. "I'm fine," he shouted, trying to hide the pain, but Jenna shot him a look that said otherwise. Danny and Eli scrambled to drag him toward a safer corner while Marcus and Jenna continued swinging, firing, and kicking anything that moved. Minutes felt like hours. The zombies kept coming, relentless, but the survivors' barricade held, and slowly, one by one, the undead fell. Finally, after what felt like forever, the last of the first wave collapsed, twitching and groaning, leaving the survivors panting, bleeding, and covered in grime. Silence settled in, heavy and suffocating. Jenna wiped sweat and blood from her forehead and looked around at the group. "Everyone alive?" she asked, voice tight. One by one nods came back. Tommy grimaced but gave a thumbs up. Eli was pale but still breathing. Danny was shaking but alive. Even Mrs. Perkins, clutching her 3 cats, managed a shaky laugh. But the victory was bitter. The horde was out there, growing, and tonight was just the beginning. They needed to be smarter. Marcus paced the floor, rubbing his temple. "We can't just defend forever. They're learning, adapting. We gotta take the fight to them before we're surrounded." Jenna's mind raced, thinking about all the streets, alleys, and abandoned buildings. "We'll need more people, more weapons, and a plan that doesn't involve waiting for them to break in again." That's when Ricky Malone, one of the locals who'd stumbled into the town hall earlier, spoke up. "There's a group holed up at the high school," he said, voice shaking but firm. "They've got some guns, traps, and a lot of people. Might be smart to link up, combine forces." The group looked at each other, a mix of hope and dread in their eyes. It meant leaving the safety of the hall and venturing into streets crawling with the undead, but it also meant numbers, strategy, and maybe a chance at winning. Jenna clenched her fists. "Then that's what we do," she said. "We move at first light. Stick together, watch each other's backs, and don't let fear run the show." Marcus nodded, checking ammo and supplies, while Danny and Eli helped patch Tommy's wound the best they could. As they huddled together that night, listening to the distant groans of the horde, a strange unity settled over the group. Fear was still there, gnawing at the edges, but determination burned brighter. They were done running. Cedar Ridge wasn't going down without a fight. And somewhere deep in the darkness, a plan was forming in Jenna's mind. A plan to take the fight straight to the zombies, to reclaim not just a building, but a piece of the world that had been ripped from them. Outside, the night groaned with anticipation, and Cedar Ridge waited, silent and tense, for the next battle. Daylight came hazy and gray over Cedar Ridge, casting a sickly glow across streets littered with wrecked cars and burned debris. Jenna, Marcus, Danny, Tommy, Eli, Mrs. Perkins, and Ricky Malone checked their weapons one last time and quietly slipped out of the town hall. Every footstep felt heavy, every sound amplified, the distant groans of the horde a constant reminder that death wasn't far behind. Marcus led the way, keeping everyone close. "Stick to alleys, move fast, and don't get cocky," he whispered, scanning the streets with sharp eyes. Danny and Eli rode ahead on their bikes, scouting for danger, while Jenna brought up the rear, wrench in hand, ready for anything. The plan was simple: reach the high school, meet up with the other survivors, and fortify. But simple didn't mean easy. Within minutes, the streets turned into a nightmare. A small group of zombies staggered across their path, drawn by noise or instinct. Danny hit one with his bike handle, sending it sprawling, while Eli panicked and swung a metal pipe wildly. Jenna swung her wrench at another, connecting with a sickening crunch. Tommy's injured shoulder burned, but he kept swinging, blood streaking down his arm. "Keep moving," Marcus shouted, forcing everyone forward. Halfway to the high school, a bigger problem appeared. A horde larger than anything they'd seen was ambling down the main street, splitting off into side alleys as if searching. "We can't go through there," Jenna muttered, backing up to a narrow side street. "We have to sneak around." Ricky Malone peered around a corner, shaking his head. "We're exposed. If they spot us," he didn't finish. Everyone knew the outcome if the horde caught them. The survivors moved carefully, holding their breath as zombies shuffled within feet of them, unaware, or maybe just ignoring, their presence. Danny whispered, "Why are they acting different?" Marcus frowned. "Adaptation. They learn fast. Every time we swing they notice, adjust. Keep quiet, keep moving." Suddenly, a moan broke the tense silence, and one of the zombies turned sharply toward them, eyes glassy and wide. It lunged. Eli screamed, tripping over a pile of debris. Danny slammed into it with his bike, knocking it over, but Eli's scream drew attention. More zombies started converging, faster this time, their groans rising into a chilling chorus. Panic surged. Jenna grabbed Eli, yanking him to safety while Marcus swung his crowbar at anything coming too close. Tommy, bleeding and grimacing, shoved a zombie into a pile of trash. Mrs. Perkins clutched her cats tightly, cursing under her breath at the chaos. Ricky fired a hunting rifle from behind a dumpster, taking out 2 zombies before he had to reload. Every second felt like an eternity, every choice a gamble. After what felt like forever, they broke through the last block of houses and saw it, the high school half hidden behind burnt-out cars and overgrown weeds, but still standing. They sprinted the last few yards, adrenaline giving them strength despite cuts and exhaustion. Inside they were greeted by a group of survivors, kids and adults alike, armed with whatever they could find, bats, knives, a few more rifles. Relief washed over them, but it was mixed with the sobering truth that their fight was far from over. Inside the high school gym, everyone paused, catching their breath. One of the new survivors, a wiry guy named Luke, handed Jenna a water bottle. "You folks got guts," he said, eyes scanning their bloodied clothes. "But you need a plan. We've been holding this place for a week. They test every barricade we make." Marcus nodded, listening intently. "Then we combine forces, make this place a real fortress. No more running." They set to work immediately, reinforcing doors with gym equipment, stacking desks and chairs, setting up lookout points near windows. Jenna coordinated teams, Marcus checked ammo and weapons, Danny and Eli helped with barricades, and Tommy patched his shoulder as best he could. Outside, the groans continued, growing louder, more numerous, as if the undead knew their prey had gathered in one place. By nightfall, the high school was strong, but the survivors were weary. Everyone knew the next attack would be bigger. Fear was still there, thick in the air, but so was a spark of hope. For the first time, the humans had numbers, strategy, and a defensible position. They weren't just surviving, they were preparing to fight back. And deep down, Jenna realized something. Cedar Ridge was becoming a battlefield, and if they wanted to reclaim their world, they'd need more than courage. They'd need unity, skill, and guts beyond anything they'd ever imagined. Night fell like a heavy blanket over Cedar Ridge, swallowing the streets in shadows. Inside the high school gym, Jenna, Marcus, Danny, Tommy, Eli, Ricky, and the new survivors worked tirelessly to finish barricading doors and windows. The groans outside had grown louder over the day, a constant reminder that the horde was waiting, watching, hungry. Everyone knew this night wouldn't be quiet. By midnight, the first warning came. A loud crash echoed from the front doors. A group of zombies had tested the barricade and found a weak point. Panic surged, but Marcus shouted orders, forcing everyone to stay calm. "Hold your ground. Don't panic. Stick to the plan." The horde hit hard. Zombies poured into the hallways, crashing into furniture, knocking over barricades and swarming toward the gym. The survivors fought like animals, swinging bats, crowbars, and anything they could get their hands on. Jenna swung her wrench with fury, taking out a zombie that lunged at Eli, who was frozen in fear. "Move!" she yelled, dragging him to the side. Tommy, despite his injured shoulder, shoved a zombie into the wall, cracking its skull with a chair. Mrs. Perkins screamed but fought like a lioness when one of the undead tried to grab her cats. Danny rode his bike inside the gym, slamming into zombies and knocking them off balance. The chaos was absolute, blood, sweat, and fear mixing in a deadly ballet. Some of the survivors weren't so lucky. One of the high school kids, a teenager named Casey, got bitten while trying to block a door. Jenna caught her just in time, slamming the door shut and pulling her away from the others. Casey's scream cut through the noise and Jenna had to bite back her panic. "We can't lose anyone," she muttered, her voice tight. Marcus nodded grimly. "We do what we have to. No hesitation." Hours passed like minutes. The group took turns holding choke points, reloading rifles, swinging weapons, and reinforcing barricades as the horde kept testing them. Sweat ran into their eyes, muscles screamed in protest, but they fought on. For the first time, the survivors realized something terrifying. The zombies were learning. The horde moved smarter, trying to flank, using cover, pressing on weaknesses. It wasn't just a fight for survival anymore, it was a battle of wits against monsters that didn't think but somehow adapted. As dawn crept over the horizon, the horde finally began to retreat, dragged away by instincts or hunger elsewhere. The survivors collapsed against walls, panting, covered in grime and blood. Their arms and backs ached and their nerves were shredded, but they were alive. They had held the high school against an impossible wave of undead, and more importantly they had done it together. Jenna looked around at the exhausted group, seeing fear, pain, and relief in equal measure. "We did it," she said quietly, though her voice carried through the silent gym. "But this isn't over. Not even close. They'll be back bigger, stronger. And we need to be ready." Marcus leaned against a wall, rifle in hand, staring at the door the horde had smashed. "We're learning," he said. "Every night, every fight, we're getting stronger, smarter. We're not just survivors anymore. We're fighters. And if we stick together, we've got a shot." Danny, still shaking, gave a small grin. "Guess Cedar Ridge isn't gonna take us down that easy, huh?" Eli laughed weakly, clutching his bike. "Not if we keep swinging." The survivors cleaned weapons, patched wounds, and reinforced their defenses. Trust had grown among them, bonds forged in blood and fire. They were a real team now, not just a bunch of scared people. And somewhere in Jenna's mind, a plan was forming. A plan to take the fight beyond the high school, to hit the horde before it could gather even more strength. But for now, the high school stood as their fortress. They had survived the night, learned to fight together, and discovered a truth they couldn't ignore. Fear would always be there, but unity and guts could turn the tide. Cedar Ridge wasn't theirs yet. But maybe, just maybe, they were starting to take it back. The sun rose over Cedar Ridge, pale and weak, but it was enough to reveal the streets in all their ruined glory. The survivors, Jenna, Marcus, Danny, Tommy, Eli, Ricky, and the rest, stood on the high school roof surveying the town below. The horde had thinned overnight, but the city was far from safe. Broken windows, overturned cars, and burned buildings told the story of chaos. Yet for the first time the humans felt something they hadn't in months: control. Jenna clenched her fists, feeling the weight of leadership settle on her shoulders. "We're not hiding anymore," she said, voice sharp and determined. "We hit them hard, clear the streets, and take back our town. Stick to the plan, watch each other's backs, and no unnecessary risks." Marcus handed out assignments. Danny and Eli would scout ahead, marking safe paths and traps, while Ricky and a few others reinforced barricades in case the horde regrouped. Jenna, Marcus, and Tommy would lead the push down Main Street, taking out clusters of zombies strategically rather than rushing blind. Everyone was armed, fueled by adrenaline, fear, and a hunger for survival that had been growing since the first night of the outbreak. The first strike was brutal. Zombies surged from alleyways, but the survivors moved like a single organism, swinging, shooting, and pushing forward. Marcus's plan worked perfectly. Choke points were exploited, traps set, and every zombie that fell made the humans bolder. Jenna's wrench swung again and again, connecting with bone, while Tommy's injured shoulder didn't stop him from smashing through the horde like a battering ram. Eli and Danny flanked from the side streets, using their bikes to knock zombies off balance, while Ricky's rifle rang out, each shot precise. The townspeople they'd rescued along the way joined in, forming a chain of resistance that zigzagged through the streets. Fear was still there, buzzing in their veins, but courage, raw, unrelenting courage, was stronger. The battle raged for hours. Groans echoed, bones cracked, and the smell of rot mingled with sweat and smoke. Some humans got scratched or bitten, but quick thinking and teamwork kept casualties low. Every fallen zombie was a step closer to reclaiming their world. And slowly the tide turned. By mid-afternoon, Cedar Ridge looked different. The streets that had once been crawling with undead were now eerily quiet, the bodies of zombies scattered and contained. Survivors cheered, embraced, and cried, exhaustion and relief mixing into a wild cocktail of emotion. Jenna looked around, chest heaving, eyes scanning the streets they had fought for, and for the first time in months she smiled. Marcus came up beside her, wiping blood and grime from his face. "We did it," he said quietly. "We didn't just survive, we took our town back." Jenna nodded. "Yeah. But we're not done. This is just the start. We rebuild, we defend, and we make sure this never happens again." The group gathered in the high school gym that evening, planning for the future. They shared stories, patched wounds, and laughed for the first time without fear lurking behind every sound. Cedar Ridge was theirs to reclaim, not just from the zombies, but from the fear that had kept them down for so long. And as night fell, the survivors kept watch together, united not just by survival, but by friendship, courage, and the knowledge that when humans stick together they're unstoppable, even against the walking dead. Cedar Ridge would never be the same, but neither would they. Fear had been beaten back, replaced with resistance, resilience, and hope. And in that hope, the survivors found something stronger than any weapon: the will to reclaim their world.